building in the city of Chicago. Beautiful Tribune Tower right there, that Gothic building with the flying.
मैडम पीछे बैठी है। हाँ चला
You all know this vessel today. See his license anyway. By the U.S. Coast Guard, CBT exceeds all their expectations for safety. And equipped with all the necessary and required life-saving equipment.
There's like a little
Anyway.
31. But I got lots of other buildings to talk about in this place. You want to hear about them? All right, let's talk about the second tallest building in the city of Chicago. Trump International Hotel and Tower from 2009. 98 stories on this beast. Hey, you see the three setbacks? Two on this side, one on the other side? I don't know if you know this about super tall skyscrapers. The wind is always trying to blow them over. So the art was the most popular architectural style of the 20th century. And yet it was very plain right here. Out of the 40 he designed, they all look alike. This was the very last one. But they all look alike because he had a philosophy of architecture. Less is more. Mission accomplished. Huh? Not a lot of ornamentation on any of his buildings. You know, when he came to Chicago from Germany, by the way, he taught architecture. One of his students wasn't a less is more architect, though. His name was Bertrand Goldberg. And he is responsible for these two corncob towers right here. What could be more to the family in the 1930s for $13 million? Then the Kennedy family turned around 52 years later and sold it for $625 million. The lesson to be learned here, folks, if it's not too late. Sullivan Center, lots of great pieces of architecture. And then you come back to the Riverwalk, pay your respects at the Vietnam Veterans War Memorial here, and then look up at the Jewelers Building from 1926, where supposedly Al Capone had a speakeasy during Prohibition. I don't know if that's true, but there is. We got a question for you. Everyone will leave with a smile on their face. The captain said he wants to send us down the river first, so I do want to start talking about the buildings you're going to see as we're going down the river, because you're not going to see them again when we come back. And so to talk about architecture in Chicago, I think it's important to realize that Chicago is, the Chicago you're seeing today is here for two reasons. Number one, because of our proximity to the lake. And number two, because after a devastating fire, we were able to rebuild, okay? We're going to talk about the Great Chicago Fire a little later, but I want to tell you that after that fire, while we were rebuilding the city, we also became the birthplace of the skyscraper. Because of all the new technology that was available to us, the very first skyscraper was erected right here in Chicago in 1885. It was called the Home Insurance Building, and it was 10 stories tall. That doesn't sound like a lot. Back then, it rocked everybody's world. Let me tell you why. Back then, they had all this new technology that they could put on buildings, like steel. For example, they were able to roll out steel and put skeletons of much taller buildings up with lighter materials on the front of those buildings. That's called cladding. But you know, if we were going to go up and up with these buildings, we needed another invention. If you're working on the 103rd floor of the Sears Tower, do you want to walk up and down stairs every day to get to work? Of course, I'm talking about the elevator, right? Did I just say Sears Tower? Oh boy, I meant Willis Tower. Here's the problem. I don't know if you noticed. I'm old, I'm stuck in my ways, and they keep changing the names of these buildings. I'm not having it. I'm going to call it the Sears Tower until I die. But it is called the Willis Tower. We're going to see that a little later on in our journey. You know what we're not going to see? That very first skyscraper. We tore that down in 1931. But I got lots of other buildings to talk about in its place. You want to hear about them? All right, let's talk about the second tallest building in the city of Chicago. Trump International Hotel and Tower from 2009. 98 stories on this beast. Hey, do you see the three setbacks? Two on this side, one on the other side? I don't know if you know this about super tall skyscrapers. The wind is always trying to blow them over. So the architects, they have to come up with design elements that trick the wind, and those setbacks are one way of doing it. Now the architect of this building, he's a Chicagoan. His name is Adrian Smith, who's also responsible for the tallest building in the world. You know what that is? The Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Oh, and if you want to know how tall the Burj Khalifa is, by the way, just put another Trump Tower on top of Trump Tower, and that's how tall the Burj Khalifa. Like I said, we just keep going up and up with these buildings. Now, another really important name in architecture in Chicago, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, the father of modernism. Modernism, boy, that was the most popular architectural style of the 20th century. And yet it was very plain because, well, look at Mies van der Rohe's very last building right here. Out of the 40 he designed, they all look alike. This was the very last one. But they all looked alike because he had a philosophy of architecture. Less is more.
I got him.
Mission accomplished. Not a lot of ornamentation on any of his buildings. Now, you know, when he came to Chicago from Germany, by the way, he taught architecture. One of his students wasn't a less is more architect, though. His name was Bertrand Goldberg. And he is responsible for these two corncob towers right here. What could be more different, than that modernist look? These are more futuristic. Marina City from 1968. We were trying to lure people back in from the suburbs. We said, come back to the city, we'll give you everything you need right here. Residences, parking, a marina. Inside that complex is a hotel, a nightclub, a bowling alley, a grocery store. And if you're wondering how many cars have fallen off the parking lot, the answer is 2.
That's
but they were both on purpose. One was for a movie and one was for a commercial, so nobody got hurt. How disappointed are we that nobody got hurt? What a tough crowd. All right, let's go underneath another bridge. We're going to go underneath a lot of these. We got 37 of them. They're called trunnion vascular bridges. That's a fancy way of saying seesaw. They all open and close in the middle like this. And you know what? They all work. This is a working river. We have to keep it open every day of the year, no matter how hot, no matter how cold. If it gets so cold in the winter that it freezes, we'll send an icebreaker down it. I mean, I've seen barges on this river on Sundays. On holidays, the river never sleeps. Although it's a lot different now than it used to be. If you were on this river in the early 1900s, it was completely different. It wasn't for entertainment. It was business. There were factories and cargo ships and warehouses. Here's one left over from those days. 1914, the Reed Murdoch Center. There used to be a ton of these dotting the banks of the Chicago River. This building is going to mess with you, and let me tell you why. You see this clock tower right here? If you count the sections of the building to the right, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To the left,
5.
There's only 5. What's going on here? Well, when we were putting in this next bridge, that building was in the way. So they actually took out one whole bay of the building, smashed it back together, and hoped you wouldn't notice.
Nothing to brag about, you wouldn't go back.
You like the environment? I mean, who doesn't, right? You're gonna like this next building coming up on your right because it's a platinum LEED building. LEED stands for Leadership in Environment and Energy Design. At 300 North LaSalle by Picard and Chilton is mostly made with recycled materials. There's a half-acre park on the roof of the building. They collect rainwater, and they use that. And they also use river water to cool the building in the summer. They bring that rainwater in, cool the building with it, and then filter it and send it back into the river, cleaner than it was before it went in. Platinum LEED, that's as high as you can go. But I know what you guys want. You want big. People come to Chicago to see big buildings. Well, I gotta tell you something. Big doesn't necessarily mean tall. Because this next building coming up on your right was the biggest building in the world until we built the Pentagon. This is the Merchandise Mart from 1928. Inside there are 4.2 million square feet of space, 8 miles of hallways, 4,000 windows. It takes up 2 city blocks. You know, back in the day when they were passing out zip codes to cities, this building got its very own zip code. That's how big it is. It used to belong to the Marshall Field Corporation. They were a very big retailer here in Chicago, but they sold it to the Kennedy family in the 1930s for $13 million. Then the Kennedy family turned around 52 years later and sold it for $625 million. The lesson to be learned here, folks, if it's not too late, marry a Kennedy. And if you do, you're going to own a piece of this next land coming up here, because they still own this. And believe it or not, this was the very first homestead in the city of Chicago, Wolf Point. There's a bunch of new buildings here. Salesforce Tower in the middle is the new kid on the block, just opened up. It's also where Chicago got its name. You know, when the Native Americans were here, they didn't actually live on the river because it was very swampy. So they used to come here, though, to collect vegetables and stuff that grew along the banks. They named the plots of land for those vegetables, as a matter of fact. They called that little piece of land Chicagua. And when it came time to, come up with a name for our city, we thought, why don't we just shorten it, call it Chicago, and call it a day? No, what we should have done was figured out what Chicagua meant, because literally translated, it means smelly garlic. So that's what we're named after. Beautiful buildings along where the river splits here, that beautiful building, River Point there. This is one of my favorites right here. So look at how this building follows the curve of the river for 365 feet of dramatic curtain wall. That's called contextualism in architecture. Even look at the glass on it. It's the same color as the river. And then as you go by, it looks like ripples of water because of the way they tempered the glass. So contextualism, meaning it's borrowing from the environment. Of course, most people look at that middle building and the first thing they say is, oh, that's Ferris Bueller's Dad's building. From one of the many movies filmed here in Chicago, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And speaking of attraction, do you have anything to do tonight? Because if you don't, I got something for you to do. I think it's the coolest thing we've got happening in town. I bring all my out-of-town guests here. See this gray box on the Riverwalk right here? every night at 8:30 for an hour, that box projects art across the river onto the merchandise mart. That entire building becomes a canvas for the work of several artists and filmmakers, and it's spectacular. It's called Art on the Mart. It happens every night, 8:30. Come on down to the Riverwalk and check it out. The Riverwalk's lit up at night. It is safe-ish. The little sections between the bridges here, by the way, they all have different themes related to life on the river. So if you come down to watch Art on the Mart, you're going to be right here where we've got floating gardens, places for fish to spawn underneath there. We bring Chicago school children here and teach them how to fish. It's catch and release because, believe me, you do not want to eat the fish coming out of this river. The lake, any day of the week. The river, not so much, and I'll tell you why in a little while. This little section of the Riverwalk is called the swimming hole. It's kind of the last one to open because we wait for really hot days. You know what you can do on really hot days in Chicago? You can run through our sprinklers. We have a whole set of sprinklers on that upper tier right there. People just run through them whenever they get hot. It's kind of a cool thing. We also have a little area coming up here called the Chicago Riverwalk Theater. Now I have a theory. Chicago is the friendliest city in the country. You wave at a Chicagoan, we will always wave back at you. Sometimes only with one finger, but we're waving. But these people are just sitting here watching what's happening on the river. You're their entertainment. Should we turn it around and see how friendly we are? Let's wave at them. If they don't wave back at us, we lose our title. What do you say? Hello, Chicago! Telling everybody how friendly we are. Look, there's waving, waving. There's the finger, I told you. Waving. Hello, Chicago. I knew you wouldn't let me down. Telling everyone how friendly we are. Hey, you know those people that aren't waving? Tourists. People are always asking me what my favorite building is in town, and that's impossible. It's like picking your favorite kid. But I have 5 buildings, not kids. And this is one of them coming up here on your right. This is 77 West Wackard by Ricardo Bofill Architectura. This is an example of postmodernism. So they took that idea of Mies van der Rohe's very plain modernism, but look what they did here. A very modern building in the middle, glass, steel, Portuguese granite. Look up on the top, Greek elements with that pediment. On the bottom, a Roman influence with archways and pillars. So you see what they did? They took a modern building and they borrowed elements from another architectural style, classical in this case, to make it more pleasing to the eye. Beautiful piece of architecture. All right, I got a job for you. After we come out of this next bridge, I want you to look up into the sky in front of the boat and find gold. Something had to be done. So we bring in the Army Corps of Engineers. They go to the south branch of the Chicago River and they dig a canal. This thing was massive. 28 miles long. Deeper than that, okay? Also, when we're out on the lake, we're going to have a couple breaks. And during those breaks, number 1, please, feel free to come up and ask me any questions you have. I love questions. I will answer them, or if I don't know the answer, I'll have the answer for you by the end of the ride, even if I have to make it up. Okay? And also, really fine job. You're going to see there's no seagulls there. You might see her today, and if you do, say hi, Ellie, and give her a wave. She's a darling. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna let you. This is an excellent time, by the way, to go visit the bar. Okay? We have 2 very, very professional bartenders down there. And I hope you treat them well. They're both saving up to go to modeling school. So really, take care of them. But this is a great time to go get a beer because the water's flat. You can drink part of it, and then you'll have still half of it when we head out to the lake. So go down, grab yourselves a drink. I'll pick it up in the lock, and we'll talk some more, okay?
यहाँ पे हम लोग लॉक पे वेट कर रहे हैं। जो उसका जो लेवल है, लेक का लेवल है, मिशिगन लेक का लेवल, वो थोड़ा हाई है। और जो बोट का रिवर का जो है लेवल थोड़ा लो है। तो यहाँ पे 2 लॉक्स बने हैं। तो एक लॉक पहले खोलते हैं जो रिवर साइड का है, और उससे बोट अंदर आ जाती है। फिर उस लॉक को बंद कर देते हैं, और जो रिवर और लेक के बीच का लॉक है उसको फिर बाद में खोलते हैं। तो उससे जो बोट का लेवल थोड़ा ऊपर उठता जाता है। अभी आप देखना इसमें आगे वीडियो में, यहाँ पे इन्होंने जब लॉक खोलते हैं तो बोट कैसे ऊपर जाती है। और अभी तो थोड़ा वेट करना पड़ता है, क्योंकि क्या होता है जब तक 2 ही लॉक के 2 ही गेट्स हैं ना, तो जब तक सारी छोटी बड़ी बोट्स सारी इसमें नहीं आ जाती हैं, तो एक बार में खुलते हैं, ताकि बार बार ना खोलना पड़े और एकदम सारी की सारी बोट्स उसमें लेक में जाने के लिए रेडी रहें। तो लेक में जाने के बाद, लेक बहुत विंडी है, बहुत हवा चलती है वहाँ पे, बहुत अच्छा है। अभी आप आगे वीडियो में देखने को मिलेगा, काफ़ी विंडी रहता है। फिर उसके बाद वापसी में जो ये वाला जो होता है लेक वाला जो गेट है, लॉक है, उसको खोल देते हैं, उसको अंदर कर लेते हैं बोट को, और फिर वो लॉक को बंद कर देते हैं। उसके बाद रिवर साइड वाला खोलते हैं तो कर जाता है। वो एक्चुअली इन्होंने ऐसा इसलिए किया है क्योंकि पहले जो सारी गंदगी थी ना, जब रिवर ऊपर होती थी एक ज़माने में लेक से, तो सारी गंदगी लेक में चली जाती थी। तो जहाँ पे लोगों ने प्रोटेस्ट किया, अभी आपने इसमें इसकी कमेंट्री में सुना भी होगा कि तो लोगों ने प्रोटेस्ट किया, तो उन्होंने उसको थोड़ा खोद के ना नीचे कर दिया रिवर को, सच दैट कि लेक ऊपर चला जाए। तो उससे वजह से कहता है कि हमेशा जो फ्लो है, नेचुरल फ्लो, वो लेक से रिवर की तरफ होता है, तो लेक गंदा नहीं होता है। देखिए अभी आपको अभी लेक खोलेंगे ये, तो आपको दिखेगा अगले सीन में। अच्छा है, अच्छा अरेंजमेंट है। नेचुरली ग्रेविटी से वाटर फ्लो कर जाता है, उसके लिए अलग से कुछ खोलना नहीं पड़ता। चलिए देखते हैं कैसे गेट खुलता है। ठीक है, हाँ। अच्छा, तो ऐसे 2 गेट बना रखे हैं यहाँ पे। उससे बहुत बढ़िया आता है।
All right, everybody, the gates are opening faster. That means we must have most of the water in here. Where is that railing, by the way? Ah, there it is. It's on the lower deck now. See, that's how much water we let in here. All right, so now all we're doing is waiting for an air horn, and then we're heading out to the lake. I'm looking out there. It is a little bouncier than the river. I'm going to just give you a heads up, so just be careful, like I said, especially on the stairs. And needless to say, the captain already said it. Ladies and gentlemen, please do not stand on the seats, especially out on the lake. Very, very dangerous. We practice man overboard drills. We just don't want to do them. All right, the first thing you're going to see as we head out to the lake is right in front of the boat. And it's something left over from that first World's Fair, and that's that lighthouse out there. The Chicago Harbor Lighthouse was part of the 1893 World's Fair. We moved it over here in 1911 to guide people down the river because, like I said, it's a working river. And off to your left is the #1, like I said, tourist destination in the city of Chicago, Navy Pier. Navy Pier has been around for a long time too, 1911, but it was called Municipal Pier back then. We renamed it Navy Pier after World War I, but it was during World War II it became a real interesting place because the Army and the Navy used Navy Pier as a training ground for their Air Corps. They would put a big aircraft carrier out in the middle of Lake Michigan, and the cadets would practice their maneuvers between the pier and the aircraft carrier. Do you know that 130 airplanes missed the aircraft carrier and ended up in the lake? We pulled 40 of them out, but there's still 90 of them at the bottom of the lake somewhere down there. Well, they were cadets. By the way, those planes that we pulled up, some of them today are being used in air shows or they're in museums. So it's kind of cool. After that, it became a jail for the Army and the Navy. They put their deserters out here. And then it became a college. It was the University of Illinois Chicago for many years until that got so big they moved to their own digs. It fell into disrepair. It wasn't until the 1990s it turned into the big tourist destination it is today. There's only 2 buildings left from the original structure, by the way. The entrance pavilion at one end and that big auditorium at the other end. Everything else is brand new. There's a lot to do on Navy Pier. There's a children's museum, a glass museum, a Tony Award-winning Shakespeare theater, an amusement park, lots of shops, lots of restaurants. You can get a piece of Chicago pizza, the best pizza in the world. We'll talk about food later. But you know what? Navy Pier's free. You can enter at one end and walk all the way down to the other end without spending a dime because it's part of that open, free, and clear lakefront. It's a great place to watch the free fireworks we have every Wednesday and Saturday nights, all summer long, all the way through Labor Day. You see them last night? Now doing fireworks for last night. It's right out there. Great place to watch. The hotel, by the way, is very new. The Sable Hotel just opened. Sable was the name of one of those aircraft carriers that was out there. And then that little rooftop behind the auditorium there with the pillow roof, that's the largest rooftop bar in Chicago. So sure, another great place to watch the fireworks. Oddly enough, we have, a short, nice limit we have in Chicago right before rooftop bars in most cities. All right, let's talk about water for a minute, because I mentioned how clean this water was. And of course, when I was a kid, I'm going to show you how clean it was. I want you to look out the middle of the lake there. It looks like there's a big house out in the middle of the lake. See that? There's another one on your side. It looks like it's got a circle set up next to it. How far you had to go out to get fresh water back in the day. There's a huge pipe that goes from right to it. In the bedrock. Water purification plant for over 100 years. Now there's 7 of those guys out the middle of the they got on to the shore now. And every day, I tell you, goes down the river every time we open the gate. You know how much they spend to bury every day? $1 billion. gallons of water a day they take out of the lake. That purification process takes 7 hours. I don't know what that other is. I don't think any of us want to know. I will take 99%. I think that's pretty good. Now, when you look at this place on the other side of the interior, you think, how can that be? Because I already have the rest purification plant below. You have a little schoolhouse. So that's actually a 10-story building straight down. And underground over there, there are 96 swimming pools that are used all that. Okay, behind me, you're looking at the north side of the city. Hey, see that big black building with the 2 white antennas on top of it? I'm going to use that as a touchstone. That's the 5th tallest building in Chicago. It's called the John Hancock Building. Only it's not. Because they changed the name of this one, too. Can you believe that just last year? I think we're going to call it 875 North Michigan. So I'm going to use the John Hancock Building as a touchstone talking about the north side of Chicago. Stick around, there's more where that came from. Alright. Just stand like you're surfing. If you're standing, stand like you're surfing. You'll be fine. Okay, so the north side is right there. John Hancock Building, 5th largest building in town. The building next to it is the 10th largest building in town. See the crowns on top of it? The crowns on top actually count in the height of the building because they're attached to it. But those now, if you go up the shore here in another mile, there's Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park. There's a that's absolutely free. No emissions. It's beautiful, it's big, and it's a great destination. You know who never gets enough love when we talk about architecture? The engineers, especially the structural engineers. And well, I'm going to give them a little love right now because you know who the structural engineer in that building was? The second African-American woman in the nation to receive architecture license. Her name was Georgia Louise. We opened 2 buildings in the top 10 tallest buildings in Chicago during the pandemic. While everybody was locked up, we were building buildings. We got 2 in the top 10 tallest. That means 2 had to drop out. One of them was that white building to the left of the John Hancock. That's the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. That used to be in the top 10, now it's number 12. And up until 2014, it was the home of my ex-fiancée, Oprah. Now, if you go up the shore here in another mile, you're in Lincoln Park. Lincoln Park is the largest park in Chicago. There's a zoo there that's absolutely free. Walk in, no admission. It's beautiful, it's big, and it's a great destination. It's not going to hardly cost you any money. Well, nobody to walk into the zoo. And it's up in Lincoln Park. A nice little location, lots to do up there. You go another half a mile north of Lincoln Park, you're by Wrigley Field, where that other baseball team in town plays. And then you go another couple miles north of there, and you're in Evanston, where you're going to find Northwestern University and a bunch of other colleges. Go about an hour north of there, you're in Milwaukee, Chicago's backyard. And then you just keep going up the shore till you're out of Lake Michigan, and we don't care anymore. Now, on the other side of the lake are 2 states as well, Michigan and Indiana. Lake Michigan is the only Great Lake entirely within the United States. On the other side of the lake, it's beautiful over there. It's within a one-day driving trip. You can make it there and back from downtown. Beautiful, huge state parks over there with mountains of sand. Lots and lots of sand dunes over on that side of the lake. And in the winter, it's a winter wonderland. That's where all the snow goes over there as well. Okay, you know what? Before we take our last break, heading down to the south side here, I want to talk about, for my architecture-loving friends, this is just for you, I want to point out those 2 buildings in front of the John Hancock Building that are black. They have white shades. They're both the same height, but one's wider than the other. They look like very, very plain, square apartment buildings, don't they? In that first row. They look like very normal, plain apartment buildings. That's the start of modernism. That is what Mies, those 2 first buildings of Mies van der Rohe are those 2. That changed the world of architecture. But I want to talk about somebody else associated with those buildings. You know who never gets enough love when we talk about architecture? The engineers, especially the structural engineers. And well, I'm going to give them a little love right now because you know who the structural engineer of that building was? The second African-American woman in the nation to receive an architecture license. Her name was Georgia Louise Harris Brown. Between her and a German immigrant Mies van der Rohe
Neem
they
mijn telefoon,
changed
Jess.
the world of architecture with modernism, and there's an example of it. So there you go, nice little story. I'll see you on the south side. You got any questions, you know what beyond the break wall where it's even bouncier on the lake. So be a little careful, but how about that beautiful lake? It was called the Sears Tower, and it was the tallest building in the world. It stayed the tallest building in the world for 25 years. Now it's the 23rd tallest building in the world, but still the tallest building in Chicago, and that's not counting those antennas, remember. Now, the Sears Tower is on the other side of the loop, and we're going to talk about the loop in a minute. Oh, by the way, I know it's called the Willis Tower, and I don't mean any disrespect to the Willis Corporation. They're a very reputable insurance company in London. One of our 5 big museums, and it's a good one. It's called the Museum of Science and Industry, and it's down around 57th and South Lakeshore Drive. It is a great destination, especially if you have kids. Lots of hands-on stuff to do there. And I gotta tell you, you know, it's on the south side, and yeah, about it, throw a rock, you'll hit a pole off in Chicago. Just don't hit me. But you get the idea. You've got 80 or 77 major neighborhoods. You're going to have a Greek town. You're going to have a Swedish neighborhood. You're going to have a Little Italy. We have all that and much more. But you know what? If you had limited time and only one neighborhood you could visit, I would suggest visiting that one. That is our downtown. Downtown Chicago, the heart of our city, what we call the Loop. You know why we call it the Loop? In the middle of it, there's 14 blocks circumnavigated by our overhead subway train, which we call the L. So it loops around the heart of downtown. Get it? boy, there are so many beautiful
Planetarium.
buildings. Some of the oldest ones in town, 130, 140 years old. You're not going to find much older than that because of the fire. But like I said, some of the most unique architecture. This first row of buildings that you see beyond the trees there is some of the oldest buildings in town. I just get lost in the architecture, and if you find yourselves doing the same, I have one word of advice for you. It took me a while to learn this, believe it or not, but always remember to keep looking up. Because if you're not looking up, boy, are you missing 3/4 of the detail and the beauty of these magnificent structures. Also downtown, art, if you like art. Pablo Picasso gave us a gift of a beautiful sculpture, and you can't miss it. It's 50 feet high. It's over at Daly Plaza. And if you're standing by the Picasso, you're very near a Miro, a Dubuffet, an Alexander Calder, a Marc Chagall. Or just go over here to Millennium Park and take a selfie under the bean. Everybody else doing it? Oh, by the way, if you go there and you haven't been there yet, you don't get. It's not really called the Bean. It's called. Its official name is Cloud Gate, and the artist, his name is Anish Kapoor. He said the whole thing was inspired by a drop of mercury. And Chicagoans were like, yeah, that's really interesting. But it looks like a bean, so we're gonna call it the Bean. And we can call it the Bean,
Aquarium.
much to Mr. Kapoor's chagrin. Anyway, that's in Millennium Park, which is right over there. Follow Millennium Park. It's all this green right here. And then you're in Grant Park as well. Grant Park is Chicago's front yard. All our big events take place in Grant Park. Lollapalooza, the music festival, the Jazz Fest, the Blues Fest, the Gospel Fest. A bunch of other things take place in the park over there. Also, you'll notice there's we're gonna pass by a fountain. That fountain is part of another big museum in town. On the other side of those trees is the Art Institute of Chicago. And the very first curator there was Clarence Buckingham. His family donated Buckingham Fountain to the city. Hey, Buckingham Fountain at night has a water and light show that starts at 9:30. That's magnificent. It's really cool to watch. Okay? And if you walk over here to watch the light show, walk a little farther because this view of our skyline at night is just exquisite. But if you're an adult and you insist on doing it, I have a place I want to send you. I want you to go there. It's called the Wiener Circle. It's on your way up to in Lincoln Park on your way up to Wrigley Field. I want you to go in there and ask for a Chicago dog with ketchup on it. Just do it. Let me know next time you take a ride how that worked out. Hey, a couple buildings that were on it. The blue lettering from 1955 to 1965. That was the tallest building in Chicago. Now it's not even in the top 20, the poor little guy. And that big white tower there, I want you to look at that big white tower and I want you to memorize how it looks. That's going to be the first building we talk about in the lot. The second building will be the blue wavy one. All right. While we're waiting to get back in the lock, first I have some, I hope this isn't bummer news for you folks, ladies and gentlemen. But when we go through the lock, we're at the mercy of the lock, okay? So if there's a lot of wreck boats waiting to get in, and half those wreck boats don't know what they're doing, it usually takes about 10 or 15 minutes longer. That's going to add time to our trip because we don't have a say in when the lock gates open and close. Having said that, I'm giving you a heads up. We may be late getting back at the end of our tour. If you have somebody picking you up, or you have somebody meeting you, or you have lunch reservations, just giving you a heads up. We could be 15 minutes late getting back to the lock, okay?
अभी हम लोग गेट को खुलने का वेट कर रहे हैं. गेट खुलेगा तो बोट आगे जाएगी.
In Chicago, and it used to be called the Standard Oil Building or Big Stand. Now it's called the Aeon Center. Of course, they've changed the name of it. Used to be the third tallest building in town, and when it opened in 1973, it didn't look like that. It was white, but it was clad in a different white. It was clad in beautiful white Italian Carrara marble. And boy, it was beautiful. You know, on a sunny day, the sun would hit it, it would glisten. At night, when they lit it up, just beautiful in the night skyline. But a couple of years after the building opened, that beautiful Italian marble decided it did not like Chicago winters, and it started cracking and falling off of the third tallest building in town. We had to take off all that marble, which, by the way, decimated the quarry in Italy when Michelangelo got all of his marble to create his masterpieces. We had to take it off. They crushed it and sent it to a refinery where they used it for landscaping material. And then they had to reclad the building in something, so they chose Mount Airy Carolina granite. And that's what's on there now. To the tune, by the way, of $80 million, or $1 million per floor. It was a big fail for Big Stan, and then last year the news for him just got worse. You know why? He lost his title as the third tallest building in town. To that blue one to the right of it, that three-tiered wavy tower with the opening on the top, is the new third tallest building in Chicago. It's called the St. Regis, and it is also the tallest building in the world, designed by a woman. And her name is Jeannie Gang from Studio Gang right here in Chicago. Now, think way back when I was talking about how the wind is always trying to blow these buildings over, right? Remember that? Well, this building's just really close to the lake, and they were especially worried about it. So, they put a prototype of it in a wind tunnel, and they hit it with the strongest gusts in a building that's not here. Now you all know that Willis Tower is the tallest building in Chicago, but it wasn't always going to be that way. A couple years ago, they started work on what was going to be even taller than Willis Tower, a building, and it was going to go right there. That was going to be the site of the Chicago Spire, a beautiful design by architect Santiago Calatrava. You know, they actually started work on the spire. They dug a big hole for it. They put the columns down to the bedrock to hold up the weight of it. They poured all the concrete for the lower levels. They ran out of money and left us with a $50 million hole in the ground. They keep talking about putting something new there, but it's been 17 years. I haven't seen anything happening there. So I know they'll put something there. I'll talk about it, I guess. All right, over here on the left side of the boat. Now you're looking at the St. Regis again, the third tallest building in Chicago, tallest building in the world, designed by a woman. Jeannie Gang's other building in town, and you know that all these buildings are on landfill. But have you noticed that on this side of the boat, they're also about 40 feet up in the air? There's a whole sub-city below here of delivery routes and parking lots and garage entrances. That's why there's not a lot of traffic up on top. It's all underground here. So that upper street, that's called Wacker Drive. The street below it is Lower Wacker Drive. The street below that is Lower Wacker Drive. If you're new to our city and you're driving a car, don't go there. That street goes north, south, east, and west. Your GPS will blow up. And if you get lost underneath there, we'll never find you. So here's what I suggest. If you want to know what it looks like, because it's cool underneath there, you should rent the Citizen Kane of Chicago movies. The Blues Brothers. Because that's where all of the chase scenes took place. In the Blues Brothers, underneath on Lower Wacker Drive. And you'll be able to see what it looks like. Alright? That beautiful triangular hotel there, right there, that's the Swiss Hotel by Harry Weiss. Behind it, Jeannie Gang's Aqua, that beautiful piece of architecture I was talking about. Most beautiful skyscraper in the world. See those, the way those balconies come out. They come out about 13 feet, and then they start tapering in, and then they disappear. If you're underneath that building and looking up, or you're looking at it from a distance, it gives you the illusion of waves on water. What a lovely, fluid piece of architecture it is. It also used to be the 10th tallest building in town. When she opened her new building, she knocked herself out of the top 10. So now it's number 1. But it's a beautiful building. We're so lucky to have Jeannie Gang as part of our Chicago family, and Adrian Smith. Yay! Looking at strangers. Alright. One more Adrian Smith building coming up here on your right. NBC Tower. Looking looking a lot like its New York counterpart, 30 Rockefeller Center on purpose. They wanted their siblings to resemble each other. The big difference is, in New York, that's where they filmed Saturday Night Live. Here is where we filmed the Jerry Springer Show. God rest his soul. Hey, by the way, if you're looking for a great Chicago-style hot dog, right there, the Northman. On the other side of the river, walk down to almost the Columbus Drive Bridge. That's an excellent place to get a hot dog. The first one, right in front of the boat, to the right, that big white tower with the clock. Who doesn't know the Wrigley Building, huh? That's one of the most iconic buildings in Chicago. But if you notice, before now, that it's actually two buildings. It's 1919 with the clock tower, 1924 with the building next door connected by two pedestrian pedways. 6 different shades of white terracotta tile, get lighter as it goes up to the top of that clock tower that was inspired by the Giralda Tower in Sevilla, Spain. The last building I'm talking about is that guy behind the Apple store, that beautiful Tribune Tower right there, that Gothic building with the flying buttresses.
Apple store, yeah?
Beautiful piece of architecture, but you know the coolest part about that building? Is the bottom along the face. You walk around that building on the bottom, embedded into the base of the building are pieces of structures from around the world. So you can walk around that building, you can touch the Great Wall of China, the Pyramid at Giza, Buckingham Palace, the Kremlin. We keep adding to it some 9/11, a piece of 9/11 or something, World Trade Center's up there. You can take a trip around the world walking around Tribune Tower. And while you're walking around the world over there, you're going to pass the Museum of Ice Cream. And the Museum of Ice Cream is expensive. But hey, you go in there and you can try the newest taste sensation. Chicago-style hot dog ice cream. I think I prefer to keep those two things separate. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be docking at Dock 4 right now. We're going to be ending our trip, but please don't get up. This is a very short dock. Sometimes we bump the wall, and we hate for you to be knocked down onto the